can play a prominent role in the disability rights arena and the larger youth movement. Action 1. Increase decent work and easing employment opportunities.
We commit to easing the entry to the labor market by opening up routes to paid internship and economic empowerment, and supporting policies to promote skills acquisition, lifelong learning, and labor market participation, including social protection programs that support employment. We will work together to create avenues that provide decent work and professional development opportunities, offer vocational rehabilitation and skills training, recruit youth with all types of impairment, including the most underrepresented groups, and organize inclusive, universally designed, accessible workplaces and reasonable accommodation.
Action 2. Make technology and assistive devices accessible, gender and age sensitive.
We commit to striving to revolutionize the design, availability and affordability of appropriate assistive technology, including digital technologies, and to promote the adoption of universally designed products, services and environments that are gender and age sensitive. We commit to ensuring the participation of youth with disabilities in all stages of this process, including design, production, testing, and making sure they reach all youth with disabilities that require them to actively contribute into all parts of society. We actively support policies and actions which help to overcome the digital divide.
Action 3. Facilitate awareness raising on disability rights, inclusion, and human rights-based approaches to youth with disabilities.
We commit to working to eradicate the attitudinal, institutional, and environmental barriers facing youth with disabilities, and enabling the full participation and inclusion in society of youth with disabilities across intersectional identities. We thereby reaffirm the legal capacity of all youth with disabilities and recognize them as active contributors and agents of change in the implementation of human rights, development, and humanitarian action. We commit to working together with youth with disabilities and their representative organizations to combat stigma, discrimination, and ableism through advocacy and sustainable behavior change strategies at every level of society, from families and organizations to government authorities.
Action 4. Ensure access to information, communications, and services for all.
We recognize the rights of youth with disabilities to access and enjoy gender and age-appropriate information, communication, and services on an equal basis with others. We commit to working closely with youth with disabilities and their representative organization across all stages of the policy process, from design to implementation and monitoring, to ensure that local and national policies recognize their right to access and enjoy all gender and age-appropriate information, communication, and related services.
Action 5. Access the right to recreation and support sustainable friendships.
We recognize that youth with disabilities, like all youth, have innate talent to be nurtured. We recognize that the barriers preventing youth with disabilities from accessing community support to develop this talent, particularly the barrier to participation in cultural life, recreation, leisure, and sport, often exclude youth with disabilities from the very activities where friendships are often formed. Therefore, we commit to supporting stakeholders in creating a cultural, of inclusion by encouraging and providing platform, skills, and services enabling youth with disabilities to participate on an equal basis with others in recreational, leisure, and sporting activities.
Action 6. Address the effects of climate change.
We recognize that climate change disproportionately affects youth with disabilities, and we acknowledge their eagerness to actively participate in the sustainable and inclusive development. We commit to working with partners to provide accessible information and communications on how to strengthen environmental management and training of service providers, including in situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies. We will reach out to youth with disabilities and their representative organizations to encourage their active leadership and participation.
Action 7. Make humanitarian action inclusive.
We acknowledge that youth with disabilities are among the most marginalized groups within any crisis-affected community, yet are often excluded from humanitarian assistance. We commit to working with organizations of persons with disabilities, OPDs, and other partners to improve understanding of the challenges youth with disabilities face during humanitarian crises. We commit to advocating for inclusive humanitarian programs and ensuring that humanitarian labor markets at the headquarters, regional offices, and at country level are inclusive to youth with disabilities.
Action 8. Ensure quality inclusive education for everyone.
We recognize that youth with disabilities have the right and freedom to access education on an equal basis with other learners in accordance with their choice and with access to reasonable accommodation and any other supports they require to fully and effectively participate. We commit to taking steps to include all learners with disabilities in the design and promotion of inclusive educational systems. We commit to increasing scholarship for students with disabilities and taking active steps to disseminate them, including through accessible communication and formats.
Action 9. Include all youth with disabilities, of all genders, through an intersectional approach.
We recognized that many youth with disabilities experience intersectional discrimination, which creates systemic patterns of social exclusion and vulnerability, and often compounds their exclusion and deprivation, particularly in the case of young women with disabilities and youth with disabilities that are poor, indigenous, LGBTQI, or belong to ethnic minorities, migrants communities, or other marginalized groups. We commit to advocate for an intersectional approach to the rights of youth with disabilities and to inclusion and equality as an underlying principle of our work.
Action 10. Promote independent living and inclusion of all in communities.
Reconocemos la necesidad de asegurar
The Youth GDS is co-hosted by the International Disability Alliance, Atlas Alliance, through Youth Mental Health Norway, UNICEF, and supported by the Government of Norway. I am now going to briefly explain some of the features of today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded. There is international sign interpretation, language interpretation in English, French, and Spanish, and cards in English. A CC button on your screen will enable the captions. If you need captions in a different window, the link is in the chat box. Kindly take a few seconds to enable the language of your choice in the language options again at the bottom of your screen. There will be an option to mute original audio. Please do not select this option. If you do, you might miss some parts of the audio. So let's take 10 seconds so you can select the language of your choice in the language options. Should you have questions for panelists, kindly use the Q&A option or leave your question in the chat box. Our team is monitoring both and will try and respond to questions in the course of the event where possible. We hope to have time for questions wherein participants may be invited to ask questions. Please note, we cannot put camera on for participants due to the limitations on the platform. Where time is an issue, priority will be given to live answering questions that are relevant to the discussions which have been presented. Should you have any accessibility issues, please send a private message to the host account or email webinars@ida-secretariat.org, and the team will try and resolve that to the best of their ability. We request all speakers to kindly keep to times and to ensure that they speak slow enough for the interpreters and captioners to follow. We would like to thank the logistic and communication teams at the International Disability Alliance for their hard work and consideration in enabling the participation of all of us here today.
Thank you, Emma. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first African Regional Summit. My name is Sarah Musau, representing United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, on youth engagement. Within this Africa Summit, we'll have 2 panels and 1 round table. The 2 panels will be on access to information and communication and infrastructure, political participation, and the round table, which is global climate change round table. That said, I am honored to introduce our first speaker for the opening remarks. Our speaker is currently the Chief Executive Officer, National Youth Council, domiciled at the Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender. National Youth Council is an advisory, research and policy institution on youth affairs in Kenya. This is a corporate body primarily designed to be the official voice and negotiator of the youth in Kenya. Since joining the NYC as the CEO, Roy has overseen the transformation of the state corporation into a vibrant organization that builds and enhances the capacity of Kenyan youth through strategic consultations, engagements, and partnerships. Before taking over the helm of NYC, Roy served as the head of procurement at Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation and previously as the deputy head of procurement at Competition Authority of Kenya, among other senior executive positions in both public and private sector institutions. Welcome, Mr. Roy Sasaka.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm proud to be part of this discussion. Yes, thank you so much, Sarah Musau, for introducing me. And as I thank Sarah, I also want to take this time to sincerely appreciate the organizers of the first ever Global Disability Youth Summit of 2022. I'm appreciating you because I know this is an initiative that has started today, but it will live beyond us. So I just want to thank you for the great initiative. As Sarah has mentioned, my name is Roy Sasaka Telewa. and I'm currently the CEO of National Youth Council of Kenya. And why Roy is keen in this summit is first of all related also to our mandate as National Youth Council of Kenya. Our mandate purely is on advocacy, advocating that young people access opportunities, advocating that young people are meaningfully engaged in all spheres of life, be it political, be it economic, be it social. We achieve this in realization of the different demographics of young people. And this, I believe that young people, by definitions, we have young people in enterprise, we have young people in education, we have young people in politics, and so many other factors. And for us, young people with disability is our major advocacy initiative. And that's why for us, we work closely with the National Council of People Living, National Council of People with Disabilities in Kenya to make sure that we advocate for inclusion. And inclusivity for us is not just a matter of compliance, but we actually now push beyond inclusion. What else is necessary in our advocacy? So that is who I am, that is what we do in Kenya. And we actually leverage a lot on strategic partnerships to make sure that we live in this mandate. So just briefly, because I'm just to give a keynote address, I'll just highlight a few things and leave much more time to the panelists that are coming after me so that we can delve deep down and make sure that the recommendations that are going to come from this first ever Global Disability Youth Summit of 2022 pushes and advances more inclusivity for the youth across the country and across the globe. So quickly, when you look at statistics, and I'll be looking keenly, especially from some of the statistics that have been done by ILO. ILO estimated that around 82% of the population in the world actually, this study focused more on economic engagement of the young people. And it said that it's estimated that 82% of people living with disability in the third world countries live on less than $1 per day. And they said that mostly it is because of devoid of access to crucial components of development, such as social amenities. And when you look at these statistics, you ask yourself so many questions. One of the questions that comes in your mind is that, don't we have laws already enacted in our countries to advocate for this, to make sure that it is not just a say, but it's something that's being realized? And if we have laws already enacted, we have a constitution already in place, then what is the gap that is actually denying our young people these opportunities? Why are we still discussing about numbers that are not favorable? And this is a call to action. And this also poses a very, very big challenge to us as policymakers, as leaders, and as advocates living now in championing the better life for the generation to come after us. The big question is, beyond legislation, beyond constitutions, what is it that needs to be embedded so that then we are not looking at just issues of minimum compliance, but we're looking at inclusivity in totality. And I think for the panelists that is coming after me, I think these are some of the things that we need to delve in. Is it an issue of awareness that we need to enhance and invest in? Is it an issue of culture change that we need to look at? What is it that is still the gap that we still have statistics that are saying we have not yet achieved at least 50% in terms of inclusivity? The statistics could be wrong, but where I come from, if we are all from this conference are able to ask ourselves those tough questions and put into perspective and come up with clear recommendations, continuously we will be able to achieve inclusivity at greater lengths that have never been experienced before. And I talk about this with a lot of passion because I've been able to achieve it at my institution. I am a CEO of National Youth Council. When it comes to governance, management, and top leadership, together with the support of my cabinet minister, we've been able to achieve representation at the board level, representation at management. And I'm just thinking that if this is a model to emulate, then we will be achieving so much as a globe or as a continent or as a region in terms of inclusivity. So yes, I would want to say that we all agree that ICT and disability is still a virgin area of research and development. And I would want to see further, how can we proactively think of blowing up this? Because when you look at the contemporary society, we have data showing that ICT or leveraging on the digital technologies is creating more jobs than it was there contemporary. So what are we doing in our respective institutions, our respective governments, to make sure that people with disabilities are accessing this critical platform and avenue that will actually increase their access also to employment, because that is the new norm as we speak. And of course, these are discussions that goes beyond us. When it comes to political participation, and I think this is also an area that we need to focus on so much, you realize a case study of Kenya. A case study of Kenya is in the political process, we've actually we've taken an affirmative action to make sure that people with disabilities have a percentage in terms of representation, so that then representation in terms of political process is well secured. And I think in terms of compliance, we've done so well in Kenya. But I'm looking to a day where we will not be only focusing on the minimum affirmative action put, but beyond what is stipulated. Are we encouraging? Are we challenging? Are we exposing? Are we making sure? Are we putting in place the right framework to ensure that people with disabilities are competing and beyond the affirmative quota that is there, they are able to achieve much, much more to a more inclusive society? That will be the dream that I think that is something that, then how do we do this? Because we are policymakers, we are leaders. How do we achieve this? And I believe as an advocate, as a youth advocate, as an inclusivity advocate, it is just for us to create a lot of awareness, for us to actually open up these opportunities, and also to look at the hindrances to accessing these opportunities, to make sure that the discussion of inclusivity is not only provided, it's not only at the legislation level, but it's beyond, it's part of us. And further, as we go down in this conference, I'm asking myself, how exactly then do we ensure, or does climate change affect people with disability? And I think that is and I want to thank the organizers, because this is a very critical element. When you look at the world now, the issues of climate action are contemporary, are dear to us, and actually are more critical to us. And I believe that people with the disability play a critical pillar, because when you look at the people who suffer the adverse effects of climate, the critical percentage that suffers most, I believe, is people with disability. So when we are discussing climate action, what is the role? What exactly does it affect people with disability? And what is our call to action as African leaders, as global leaders? What is it that we want to achieve? So that then we are creating an inclusive society and that we are not leaving anyone behind. So I think that is very critical for us as policymakers in this discussion. And as I make this address, I just want to challenge all of us here that beyond legislation, beyond what is provided for, we should be discussing further on how do we increase more, how do we open up this opportunity window so that we build a more inclusive, a more just, and a more an environment that makes sure that these opportunities are taken advantage by all people. That will be my call to action to all the leaders I'm addressing today. And again, as I conclude, I just want to thank you all for making sure that we are in the first Global Disability Summit of 2022. And young leaders, let's take advantage of this to make sure we come up with high-level recommendations. I'll commit to be among the champions who is going to make sure that those recommendations are ratified in my country, are implemented, and we have actually make a monitoring and evaluation system put in place to make sure we achieve this. Thank you so much, and may we have a blessed and successful summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sasaka, for such invoking remarks and for recognizing the need for inclusion of youth with disabilities, as well as highlighting research as a core area youth bearers need to focus on. So we will move to our first panel on accessibility, access to information, communication, and infrastructure. And I'm honored to introduce our moderator for this session, who is Jacqueline Jerry, a young entrepreneur and disability rights advocate, currently working at Safaricom PLC as a customer experience executive and communication lead for Spina Bifida and Hydrocephalus Association of Kenya. She's a youth ambassador of Gifted Community Center, GCC, and a board member at Gipima Primary School. She holds a diploma in theater arts and film technology from Kenyatta University and a yearly East Africa Fellow. Her aspiration is to see persons with disabilities included in the workforce and development of policies. She believes in influencing change with every interaction. Welcome, Jacqueline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and welcome everybody to the first ever Youth Global Disability Summit. So on this session, we are going to tackle or discuss more on access to information, communication, and infrastructure for persons with disabilities. And with me, I have amazing panelists consisting of 4 speakers. They are doing amazing work in their respective countries when it comes to implementation and advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities. To start us off, first speaker is going to be Sovan Sharma. He's from Mauritius. He's an upcoming author and he has published several articles which can be found on his website. He can leave a link in the chat box so that you can be able to see his work. So most of his articles touch on disability awareness as well as literature. He has a physical disability, and to be able to combat bullying and fear, as a child, Sylvan turned to writing for support, where he was able to unleash his emotions. And he has also served as the president of the Rotaract Club and holds a bachelor and a master's degree. Our second panelist is Joseph Owino. He's from Kenya, a 4th-year student pursuing a degree in economics and statistics. And he's the current student leader representing the interest of students with disabilities at Mount Kenya University. He's also the youth senator in Siaya County, the youth leader in the Siaya County Disability League, and also an ambassador of a gifted community, and also a member of the para taekwondo team here in Kenya. Our third panelist is Mashukura Habibu from Tanzania. She is a special needs education teacher with visual empowerment, currently pursuing a master's degree in education management and administration at the University of Dar es Salaam. She's also the director of access technology for visually impaired and has worked with IDA and the UN on the implementation of the CRPD. She's also had an opportunity to voluntarily offer classes on ICT for persons who are visually impaired. And lastly, we have Jackson Loibuku from Kenya. He's also an art activist advocating for the rights of persons with disability in Samburu County, and he holds a diploma in education. So to our four panelists, thank you for availing yourselves. I will start with Mashukura. So Mashukura, I would like for you to tell us, you will kindly tell us the challenges that you have faced when it comes to accessing information in your country.
Mute. Currently unmuted.
Hello.
Hello, Mashukura.
Yes, Mashukura Habibu here. And
yes.
The challenges are too many, but I will specifically talk on few of them. We have a big challenge of having accessible information. Most of public documents are not accessible. They have prepared in a format which me as a person and my colleagues with visual impairment, we cannot access. For example, we are using Braille or we are using digital medias to access information, but most of public documents are written in ink print. So it is very difficult for us to read them, maybe by using a reader, but on our own is very difficult. And when you try to use even OCR, optical character recognitions, to access them, most of them are not written correctly. Our programs find it difficult to identify them. But the second one is, most in our TV shows, most of their broadcasting advertisements were not accessible. They are preparing advertisements with actions only. There's no captions. So me as a person with visual impairment, without assistance from a sighted person, it is very difficult to understand what is going on the TV. I can hear only a music going on, but at the background, maybe there is So what was I was saying that most our TV shows, there is no any caption or sign language interpreters who can help persons with disabilities to understand what is going on in the TV shows. And our elevators, our traffic lights does not provide any information which can help us to understand what is going on, what is going there. You cannot understand if the traffic light now is allowing me to go or what. Or you cannot understand the lift where there's on the button, there's no any marker to understand, to tell you that you can go somewhere by clicking here. And in our ATMs, there is no any audio sound which can help us to understand the buttons. So access to information is very difficult in our area.
All right, thank you, Mashukura, for shedding those insights. I would like us now to go to the second question, and this is this one goes to Suvan. So Suvan, I would like for you to tell us what are some of the practical steps that you think your government should take to ensure that youth with disabilities are able to access information through the language that they understand.
Good evening, team. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for having me be part of the panel and address you all. When we talk about access to information communication, there's a lot we can speak about. There's a lot we can ponder upon, but we need to start from the basics. It is a right of each and everyone to have access to basic information and the basic communication channel so as to give us the day-to-day information. Most persons with disabilities around the world, we come from different disabilities affecting different part of us or different activities to which we are entitled to. The first and foremost step is for each and every governing state to understand that disability and the repercussions are different. Physical disability, visual impairment, audio impairment, and other sort of disability. Each and everyone has its own set of hindrances and its own set of ease of access we can provide. Governments and state parties need to understand that these disabilities will be able to address when they understand that each and every disability is not the same, and the cohort of persons with disabilities themselves, they differ. This basic difference will give rise to new protocols and new statements in place. When we talk to access to information, we need to talk about access to news, access to information to be literate, access to information to be good intellectually, and these types of access to information is what shapes us to be the person we want to be, or the type of person we want our community to forge. Persons with disabilities are normally left behind. We are left behind. Why? Because government don't understand disability and they don't understand which system to put into place. The first thing we need to do across the globe, and irrespective of which country we are from, is to have inclusion and participation of persons with disabilities into decision making. They cannot take decision for persons with disabilities without persons with disabilities, because we need to understand what this person believes, what do they feel, and how do they come around the obstacle there. And access to information. I will take the example of someone with a visual impairment. During COVID-19, most countries did broadcast information, but there was basically not a single country that broadcasted information accessible to person with a visual impairment or person with limited intellectual capabilities. It is very important that the basic information is made available. And when we talk about communication, how do we communicate with someone with audio impairment, or how do we communicate with someone with visual impairment? It differs. It's not the same on how we communicate with someone with mobility issues. State parties need to ensure that basic services such as healthcare, transport, and education are addressed equally and are made ethically and equitable access to each and everyone. State parties need to ensure that disability is defined in the constitution of their country, and it is put on to be addressed to each and every section of the constitution. It starts with the parliament, and the parliament needs to understand that persons with disabilities are part of the population. What I was stating is that each and every disability is different. And during COVID-19, most of our states, most countries, they did not really take into account that we have people with audio impairment, people with visual impairment, and access to information needs to be made available. Access to information and practical communication practices will be made available as and when we have our policymakers who endorse persons with disabilities while taking decisions. We need to ensure that in each every decision-making process, from the constitution to laws being enacted, disability is well defined
and each and every subset of disability, from what we understand, from what we feel, from the hindrance, obstacles, and how far disability can be addressed across numerous services and across numerous distribution channels. Because each and every country has a population of persons with disabilities, and each disability differs. So we need to ensure that all these disabilities and this person with disabilities are catered for. How can they be catered for? It is with practical and legitimate standard processes. We have the United Nations Convention for Persons with Disabilities, which is there. It is there as a roadmap. The blueprint is there. Each and every state parties and us as leaders needs to ensure that your UNCRPD is well implemented. It is signed and ratified, yes, but it needs practical implementation. How can we go for practical implementation? It is where we have functional institutions. And I therefore request each and every one of you to ensure that your country has institutions that are well catered for and institutions that are working in a hybrid model with persons with disabilities, providing the forefront of understanding disabilities and how far we can go towards inclusive access. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvan. I get your point that indeed it's important for persons with disability to actually gain access to information, because this plays a critical role when it comes to the decisions that they make for themselves. Moving along, the next question will be addressed to Joseph Owino. Joseph, kindly, maybe you can tell us, do you think that poor education and lack of employment are negative results of having no access to infrastructure?
Hello.
Hi, Joseph.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi, Joseph.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So I would like to hear your insights on what you think if poor education and lack of employment are a negative results of having no access to infrastructure.
Poor education and that issue of lack of employment that is being caused by lack of infrastructure. Lack of infrastructure cause is one of the causes of this, but not the total cause of this, because we have other issues like financing that affects the provision of services, especially in education. When we have the access to financing, this is to ensure that we have resources that are required to support the education, so that the persons are well informed about anything that is happening in the society. Apart from that, there's also policies that are set by different stakeholders, be it the government, especially in the education platform. That is the government through the Ministry of Education, other players, that determine. We have the Ministry of Treasury, also that fund education, especially in our education institutions, that is, be it primary, secondary level, or even the tertiary institutions. So it also affected by the policies. Infrastructure also plays a bigger role because it hampers or supports accessibility, because much of accessibility helps in ensuring that employment in the workplace is factored in, especially when you have persons who use crutches, those who use wheelchairs. They can't move when there are no ramps in such places, or there are no lifts in such places. So there's a much bit of problems in movement. So we have matters of policies, we have even financing, we have also inherent characteristics in the person himself. Poor education, sometimes the societies that we are coming from, we are hit, like the poverty levels are so high that it hampers our access to education, and that makes people not seek education because they are poor. They can't afford the education to their required levels, or to the standard level that we deem fit. I think that is what causes. So infrastructure causes some part of some is part of the reasons that cause lack of employment, and also lack of also poor education, especially in employment when we have persons who are highly impeded in accessing these places where there are job opportunities. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joseph, for those insights. And
Yeah.
also to the participants, you can write your questions in the chat box to our panelists, which we shall handle during the Q&A session. But thank you, Joseph, for those insights. I would also like, this question goes to Jackson as well and Mashukura. So I think Jackson will be the first to respond. So what do you think? Do you think that these persons with disabilities have access to their rights to privacy? And if they do, how do they have access? And if they don't, why not? And what are some of the steps do you think can be implemented to ensure that persons with disabilities are entitled to privacy? Mashukura, are you available?
Hi.
Hi, Mashukura.
Okay.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Yes.
Persons with disabilities are not at all able to access their privacy because most of them are using second party to access the information. For example, people with visual impairment, most of them are using readers to read their messages and other things. And people with hearing impairment are using sign language interpreters. So this sometimes can make them to have difficulty in having privacy. But in order to, there is a way of having privacy. For example, I will talk more on persons with visual impairment because that is my career. There is smartphones which have ability to be used for these people by using accessibility programs, maybe TalkBack, Android accessibility suites, voiceover, and other things. So with these programs, they can hide the information because they have a possibility of even hiding the screen when they're using their phones, so other people cannot access their information. And the difficulty is how to learn those programs. In our country, we have a very, very few centers which can teach these people how to use computers, smartphones. We are depending on ourselves to use social media, various social media. For example, in our country, we have WhatsApp group where we are teaching each other on how to use smartphones and the computers. So we need even governments to put effort there in order to help many people to get that information. And even companies who are creating those smartphones, it will be better if they will sell those smartphones in an affordable price, but not many, all of us, we have ability of affording the price of those digital devices. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mashukura. Yeah, I hear you. So Mashukura states that persons with disability do not have rights to privacy because they have to, in order to access information, a third party has to be involved. And to solve this, especially for persons who are visually impaired, maybe companies can find ways to create or come up with affordable devices embedded with TalkBack. So we are moving on, okay. So we have the last question, and this will go to all the panelists, and each of you has 1 minute to respond to this question. I would like to start with Jackson. So what are some of the policies that are available in your country that promote accessibility? And what do you think that, and how can young persons with disabilities be involved in the implementation of such policies? We'll start with you, Jackson Owino.
Okay, in my country, there's the government directive on the establishment of ramps and lifts in buildings, to ensure that persons on wheelchair and or those using crutches, can access these buildings, especially those buildings with many floors, without much problems that can hamper their lives, because of their condition. Another thing also in transmission of information, especially when in this era of social media and other medias that we use in communication, so that people can access this information. There's that directive, especially through the media, when there's broadcasting of news and all other programs. We must have the insert, that is of a sign language interpreter insert, so that at least goes one-on-one with the person who's giving the information, to ensure that there's that uptake of information by everyone. That include persons with hearing impairment also get this information very well in the best format accessible to them. Then also when disseminating information, and as youth, as youth with disability, we advocate for this, especially when now we're in the electoral period, as we are getting towards the elections, calling upon all stakeholders involved that when there's voter education and civic education that is being done to persons, being done to everybody, then they must take care of the needs of persons with a disability. This by ensuring that all the information that they're providing, when they have printed, they have printed information, they ensure that it is also provided in braille to cater for those who have visual impairment, who cannot get those information directly in print. And also for those who have low visual impairment, although can read print, especially those persons with albinism. We know those persons with albinism have low vision. And so we must also advocate that the print must be done in large print, so that they don't strain much in accessing this information, because we all know that information is power, and without information we can't live in an era that we are living in. And so we must ensure that this information reaches everyone in the best format accessible to them. Apart from that, when we have videos that carry information, we must ensure that these videos have sign language signages or captions, to ensure that persons who have hearing impairment get this information very well, so that the accessibility of information is enhanced. And the last one is, when we are having documentaries, or written materials for easy access to persons with visual impairment, because most of when you have high volume of materials to read, then the persons with visual impairment may be fatigued in seeking for this information. You know how they try to access this information. So we ask for audio visuals to be produced of the same information, whether it's printed or produced in which other format, so that when they get these audio visuals, they can get the information very well and directly, so that at least there's no omission of this information. And that's how we try to work.
Okay, thank you so much, Joseph. Jackson, I would also like to hear your insights in regards to whether policies are available in your country that promote accessibilities, and how can persons with disability be involved?
I do think the policies of accessibility in my country, Kenya, is a 50-50 phenomenon, and because we have got the National Construction Authority policies, that is aimed to ensure there is ramps in buildings and maybe roads construction, there is accessibility in some of infrastructure. Also, there are some constitutional policies that I think give us some of the privileges when it comes to job placement. So I think the issue of accessibility to information, to infrastructure is partially catered for.
Okay.
That is my
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So in the interest of time, I would like us to respond to some of the questions in the Q&A in the under Q&A. So this, any of you will be in a position to answer. So one of the question is why is it that the constitutions that are in many countries are accessible in just one format and not accessible to PWDs? I did not get your name, but I can see the participant is from Zanzibar. I think Mashukura, you can be able to respond to this question.
I think the issue is at time. You know, previously, people with disabilities are not well recognized, especially their rights. People, they don't know if people with disabilities can be educated, can know how to read and write. So, and by our constitutions here, was made many years ago. So they can be accessible if in various means. First, they can be uploaded in the website with accessibility mode, and they can be recorded in the audio format. People they can be able to read, or they can be translated into Braille, so people can read them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for those insights. So Suvan, I would also like to hear your insight. This is a question from Doris Mkiva, and she's asking on what are some of the steps that you as a person with disabilities you have taken in regards to advising for policy development suits for persons with disabilities, or some of the action steps you have taken as a person with disabilities to inform a policy in your country.
In Mauritius, we have two institutions, Special Education Needs Authority and Training and Employment for Disabled Persons Board. It is, these are two institutions that are aimed at promoting access to education, and Training and Employment for Disabled Persons Board is for employment. But the main challenge remains, the main challenge here in Mauritius, it's about understanding disability. And to address this issue, most of the time, I look forward to multiple media channels, writing articles on my blog, doing short videos, and also promoting on a day-to-day basis using social media and local media to reach out the mass. The mass needs to understand disability itself. The moment your population, the general population understand disability, and policymakers understand that disability and persons with disabilities are part of their own population, there will be policy measures. There will be policy measures which will aim at improving the lives of persons with disabilities. Let me take the example of the elderly. Most countries have an elderly population, and there are laws that protect and govern multiple issues towards old age people and elders. I'm not asking for the same. I use it as an example, but we need a new set of laws, a new set of regulations for our constitution and institution to function, especially for persons with disabilities. We cannot mix persons with disabilities with Children Act. We cannot mix children or elderly with persons with disability. Persons with disability need to be addressed on their own and need to ensure that each and every disability is catered for. My mission here and across Africa will be to ensure that information about disability is well disseminated. And this institution, like I voiced out before, employment institution, education institution, these need to work in hand. And what is primordial today across the world is that health services need to cater for persons with disabilities. There need to be a proper channel for each and every person with disability attending a health institution and ensure that they are well understood. The moment, because a person with visual or audio impairment will not be able to explain his issue, his health issue, or her health issue the same way a normal person does. It is, and my mission will be to go for further research and do my best to implement these measures. Thank you.
You're welcome, Suvan. So echoing just what our panelists have said throughout the session is that persons with disabilities do not want to be left behind. And most of the time we are, because we're not able to access information, we're not able to access communication, and also infrastructure because of the barriers that exist. But I believe that we can be able to do something to break those barriers. So we have come to the end of the first session. I'll hand over the summit back to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for such great moderation, and to our speakers, we appreciate your contributions and your personal experiences. We have 2 minutes for a break, so we will be back. I don't know either team if we can do 5, but how our time is, we have only 2 minutes for a short break before we come back for the political participation session. So don't go away. We'll be back shortly. Thank you so much, everyone.